Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that's either about a revolutionary theory of everything or, well, a grand delusion. It's one of the most ambitious and definitely one of the most controversial ideas in modern physics, and it comes from completely outside the system. We're going to break down Eric Weinstein's geometric unity. To really get geometric unity, you've got to understand the question that's driving the whole thing. And this quote from Weinstein, it really gets to the heart of it. For him, physics isn't just some dry academic job. No, he sees it as the ultimate tool we have for scratching this universal philosophical itch. You know, that really deep human need to figure out, what are we and where are we? Okay, but here's the thing. According to Weinstein, we just can't answer that question right now. He argues that physics has basically ground to a halt. And before we can even think about finding an answer, we first have to admit that we're smack in the middle of a really deep systemic crisis.
And this number right here, 51, this is Weinstein's Exhibit A. 51 years. That's how long he says it's been since we've had any fundamental change to the governing laws of physics, what's called the Lagrangian, since the Standard Model was basically wrapped up. Now for him, 51 years, that's not just a slow patch. It's proof. Proof that the entire field is broken.
And it goes deeper than just the science. For Weinstein, this is a cultural problem. His whole argument, which you can see in this quote, is that the institutions themselves, the very culture of science, has decayed. He'd say the brilliant minds are still there, for sure, but the environment, the culture that let us make these huge leaps, like the Standard Model, he says that's gone. So he really sharpens this point by drawing a line in the sand between two systems. On one side, you've got the ideal, right? The thing we all learned about in school, the scientific method. But on the other side, that's what he calls the academic method. And he argues that's the reality. It's a game, he says, a game run by metrics like citations and H-indexes, where peer review becomes gatekeeping, not a search for truth, and where this thing called the Matthew effect just keeps funneling all the credit to the people who are already famous, leaving the actual discoverer out in the cold. Okay, so if that's the problem, a science that's stuck in a rut and a culture that's broken, what's his solution? Well, it's a theory he calls geometric unity.
So geometric unity, or GU as some call it, it starts by just blowing up our most basic assumption. Forget about particles, forget about forces for just a second. Weinstein asks a much bigger question. What is the fundamental arena of reality? And his claim is that for more than 100 years, we've had the completely wrong answer.
His answer is kind of mind-bending. He says we don't even have the right word for it yet. He argues that reality isn't a place, it's a relationship. The medium that we're all swimming in, so to speak, is this complex mathematical object he calls a bundle. You could almost think of it as a super modern, mathematically solid version of that old, thrown-out idea of the ether, some kind of hidden structure that underpins everything.
And this is where the idea gets, well, really wild. So, you know how Einstein gave us this single unified stage for reality? Four-dimensional spacetime. Well, geometric unity takes that stage and just rips it in two. It says our familiar four-dimensional classical world is in a constant conversation with a much, much bigger 14-dimensional quantum world. So reality in this picture isn't one of the stages, it's the relationship between.
Okay, so if you've got a totally new arena for reality, you're going to need a totally new rulebook, right? This whole two-world model, it means that a lot of the core ideas of modern physics, they have to be tossed out and just rewritten from the ground up.
And the claims that come out of this new picture are just staggering. Weinstein says GU starts from almost nothing, and yet the biggest mysteries in physics just kind of fall out of the geometry. Like, for example, it completely flips the script, making the classical world more fundamental than the quantum world. It suggests that those three weird generations of matter particles, they aren't random at all. They're just a natural result of the math. And maybe the most controversial part, it starts as a classical theory that then has to be quantized. That's the complete opposite of how physics has been done for decades.
I mean, this all sounds incredibly ambitious, right? So you have to be asking, why isn't every physics department on the planet debating this? Well, Weinstein's answer, it has less to do with math and more to do with a very personal story of discovery, of being dismissed, and what he sees as a massive institutional failure.
In this timeline here,
This is absolutely central to his whole story. So back in the late 80s, he says he came up with a little piece, a flake of GU, but his equations were shot down at Harvard. Fast forward 7 years. He says they were rediscovered by 2 other physicists, Nathan Seiberg and Ed Witten. And today, those exact same equations are a cornerstone of modern geometry. And they're not called the Weinstein equations. They're called the Seiberg-Witten equation.
Now, for Weinstein, this isn't just about ego. He argues that in science, credit is everything. It's the lifeblood of a career. It's what lets you get a job, get funding, heck, even get health insurance. He claims what happened to him is a textbook case of the Matthew effect, where the system just automatically reassigns a discovery from someone unknown to someone who's already established.
So that experience, as you can imagine, totally shaped his view. He says it led him to reject the entire academic system. He flat out refuses to publish in peer-reviewed journals. He even calls them a casting couch. A pretty provocative term, yeah? But for him, it's a place where ideas get judged not on their merit, but on who you know and what your status is.
Okay, but you might be thinking, why not just put the theory out there? On a public server like the archive. Well, in Weinstein's view, even those systems are part of the problem. He argues they're not really tools for evaluating new ideas. He sees them as tools for enforcing the existing consensus, basically designed to keep disruptive ideas from outsiders like him out.
So here we are. You've got this radical physics, this huge ambition, this very personal backstory, and a whole lot of controversy. It all comes down to one final, big, unanswered question.
And that leaves us right here. Is geometric unity the revolutionary answer to a 50-year crisis in physics, led by a lone genius fighting a broken system? Or, to use a phrase from Weinstein himself, is this whole thing just a Walter Mitty world, a beautiful, elaborate, but ultimately personal fantasy? Right now, the theory is totally unvetted. It's unverified. And until that changes, that provocative question is exactly where the story of geometric unity has to end.